All right, strap in, everyone, because today we are diving deep into warp speed. You know, that sci-fi staple where starships kind of just like zip across galaxies fast in the blink of an eye. And you guys, our awesome listeners, sent in a ton of research and articles on this. So we're going to sift through it all. And we'll see if warp drive is, just a fantasy or a potential future for humanity.
I think what's always captivated people about warp speed is that it really embodies that human desire to push beyond our limits and explore the universe. It's no wonder it's such a popular theme in science fiction.
Yeah, totally. I mean,
Well,
who hasn't dreamed of, like, hopping between star systems like in Star Trek, right? But there's that teeny tiny problem, that pesky nothing travels faster than light thing.
yes, Einstein's theory of relativity. It definitely presents a challenge. To put it simply, imagine space-time is like a giant sheet, and massive objects, like planets, create curves in that sheet. Anything traveling within that space-time has to follow those curves, and the speed limit, the cosmic speed limit, is the speed of light.
So even if we had, like, crazy powerful engines, we'd still be stuck crawling along those space-time curves. Kind of a bummer, right? But wait, I've read that there might be ways to, let's say, cheat the system.
Well, the idea is to not break the speed limit within space-time, but to manipulate space-time itself. So think of it this way. What if instead of trying to outrun light, we warp space around a spacecraft? We could compress space in front of it and expand the space behind it, creating a, warp bubble.
So the spaceship isn't actually going faster than light, it's just hitching a ride on a warped bubble of space-time. It's kind of like taking a shortcut through a wormhole or something.
Exactly. The spaceship would be stationary within the bubble, and the bubble itself is what's moving faster than light. It sounds straight out of science fiction, I know. But there's actually a theoretical model for this called the Alcubierre drive.
Okay. Yeah, I remember reading about that. But wasn't there a catch? Like, we need some sort of special ingredient, something a little exotic.
You got it. The Alcubierre drive relies on something called exotic matter. It has what we call negative energy density. Basically, it acts like anti-gravity. Instead of pulling things together like normal matter does, it would push things apart.
Okay, so we need this substance that basically repels gravity to create this warp bubble.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm guessing we don't exactly have a stockpile of this exotic matter just lying around.
Not quite, no. In fact, we haven't even fully proven that exotic matter exists. It's still a theoretical concept. And even if it does exist, the amount we would need for a warp drive, it would be astronomical, far beyond what we can produce right now.
So we were talking about a hypothetical engine that needs a hypothetical substance that we may not even be able to find or use. Sounds like a bit of a long shot, to say the least. But I'm guessing that even if,
Mm-hmm.
somehow, by some miracle, we figured out the exotic matter problem, there'd still be other hurdles, wouldn't there?
You're absolutely right. Just generating enough energy to create and sustain a warp bubble, it would be a huge challenge. We're talking energy levels that dwarf anything we can produce today. Imagine trying to power New York City with a single AA battery. That's the scale we're talking about.
Yeah, so I guess those pocket-sized warp drives we see in movies are a tad unrealistic.
So what about, the safety? Zipping around at warp speed sounds exhilarating, but also incredibly dangerous, don't you think?
Absolutely. Think about like a tiny pebble, so small you can barely see it, hitting a spacecraft at near light speed. The impact would be devastating. It'd be like that scene in Guardians of the Galaxy, where they fly through that crazy dense asteroid field, but a million times worse.
Yikes. So before we book our interstellar cruise, I guess we need to figure out some serious shielding and navigation systems. Don't want to become cosmic roadkill. So are there any, research groups or organizations that are taking this warp drive research seriously? Or is it all theoretical at this point? While it might sound like science fiction, there are scientists exploring warp drive. For example, at NASA. At their EagleWorks laboratories, there's a group of physicists. They've been investigating a concept. It's called the White-Jude Warp Field Interferometer. And they're trying to create microscopic warp bubbles in the lab.
No way, seriously. So
Wait.
even if a full-scale warp drive is, way off, there are scientists right now experimenting with the basic building blocks of this technology. That's insane. So what are they hoping to achieve with these experiments?
Well, the goal is to really understand the physics behind warping spacetime. They're looking for any measurable effect, even if it's tiny. That could prove the theory behind warp drive. It's like taking those first baby steps towards a technology that could revolutionize space travel as we know it.
So the dream of warp speed isn't totally dead. There are scientists out there pushing boundaries. It's incredible to think that those little tiny warp bubbles being created in a lab could be like the seeds of interstellar voyages. That brings up another question. What would be the impact of this technology on, like, our understanding of the universe and ourselves?
Now, that's a fascinating question, and that's exactly what we're going to unpack in the next part of our deep dive. We'll look at the potential implications of warp speed, from revolutionizing space exploration to challenging our very understanding of humanity's place in the cosmos. So buckle up, because things are about to get really mind-bending.
All right, so I think we can all agree that warp speed faces some uh, pretty huge hurdles. But let's say, hypothetically speaking, that we did crack the code. Like, we figured out all that exotic matter stuff and the crazy energy requirements. What would a warp-capable civilization look like?
Now, that's when things get really interesting. I mean, the possibilities with faster than light travel are so vast. They really touch upon, like, everything, from scientific exploration to the very core of what it means to be human.
Okay, so let's start with the obvious, right? Space exploration. I mean, reaching even the closest stars would take, like, generations with our current tech. But with warp drive, it would be like hopping on a cosmic train.
Exactly. Imagine sending probes or even crewed missions to other star systems, and they could get there and back within a human lifetime.
Wow.
I mean, we could finally answer some of those huge questions, like, are we alone in the universe? What other wonders are out there?
It's like all those sci-fi scenarios would suddenly become possible.
Right. We could study alien planets up close, maybe even find evidence of extraterrestrial life. It would fundamentally change how we understand the cosmos.
Totally. But let's be real, it's not all going to be sunshine and rainbows, is it?
Yeah.
I mean, this technology could also open up a whole bunch of ethical and societal challenges, too.
Oh, for sure. That's a really crucial point. What happens if we encounter a civilization that's, less technologically advanced? What are the ethical implications of making first contact? How do we make sure we don't harm their culture or their environment?
It's almost like that prime directive from Star Trek.
Right. The idea of not interfering with other civilizations. But in reality, that's going to be a really tough line to walk.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And what about, like, resources? If we become a spacefaring species, will we start trying to take resources from other planets? Could that lead to, like, interstellar conflict?
Those are questions we need to consider very carefully.
It's kind of a scary thought. Even as we reach for the stars, we might bring all of our problems and conflicts with us. But maybe, just maybe, this push to explore the cosmos could also be an opportunity for us to, like, grow and change for the better.
I'm really glad you brought that up. Imagine a future where humanity, united by a common goal, sets aside its differences to explore the universe together. It's a hopeful vision. But I think it's one that we could achieve if we can navigate these challenges wisely.
It's a real balancing act, isn't it? On the one hand, there's the potential for incredible discoveries and advancements, and on the other, we have this huge responsibility to use this power carefully and thoughtfully.
You said it.
It's a lot to think about.
It really is. Warp speed isn't just about, breaking physical limitations. It's about pushing our ethical and philosophical boundaries as well. It forces us to ask some really big questions about who we are, where we belong, and what kind of future we want out there in the stars.
Like a mirror, right? Reflecting both our potential for good and bad. But let's shift gears for a moment. We've talked a lot about the big picture, the societal impact and all that. But what about the more personal effects of warp speed? Like, what would it do to an individual?
Now we're getting into the really mind-bending stuff. Imagine traveling to another star system and then coming back to Earth, only to find that, like, decades or even centuries have passed.
Bro.
The way we think about time would be completely changed.
Yeah, it's like those time travel movies.
Exactly. You could essentially fast forward through history.
While everyone else experiences time normally, that would have some crazy psychological and philosophical implications.
Right. It raises some interesting questions like, would this kind of journey make us feel more connected to the universe? Or would we feel isolated and disconnected from everything we know?
It's a real paradox.
Hmm.
Reaching for the stars might make us feel both incredibly small and incredibly significant at the same time.
It's a lot to process, for sure. But that's what's so fascinating about it. Warp speed doesn't just challenge our understanding of physics. It challenges how we understand ourselves.
Yeah, you're right.
It makes us think about our place in the universe, the meaning of time, what it really means to be human.
Wow, you've given our listeners a lot to chew on. So we've covered the dream of warp speed, the challenges, and the potential impact on our understanding of, well, everything. But are we getting ahead of ourselves here? Is warp drive something we should even be striving for? Or is it just a distraction from, the more pressing problems we have here on Earth?
That's a really important point. Maybe we should be focusing on things like climate change, poverty, disease. I mean, what's the point of conquering the galaxy if we destroy our own planet in the process, right?
Yeah, that's true. It's a tough question, no easy answers. But I do think that this pursuit of warp drive, even if it never actually happens, can teach us some valuable lessons about ourselves and our place in the universe.
I completely agree. It reminds us of how ingenious humans can be, our endless curiosity, our desire to explore, and those qualities are definitely worth celebrating.
Okay, so we've really gone deep on this whole warp drive thing. Mechanics, the possibilities, the potential problems. It's been quite the journey.
It really shows how, like, one simple question, can we do warp speed, leads to a whole bunch of other really complex and fascinating questions.
Yeah, exactly. And, even if we never actually achieve warp drive,
Right.
just the fact that we're trying, it's already pushing the boundaries of science and inspiring new discoveries.
Absolutely. I mean, think about Miguel Alcubierre himself. When he first proposed his warp drive model back in the early 90s, he wasn't even sure if the math would work out. But it sparked so much research, not just into warp drive, but into, like, the fundamental nature of space-time itself.
So even if we never build a warp-capable starship, this whole pursuit could lead to breakthroughs in other fields, like propulsion, energy generation, maybe even our understanding of gravity.
Exactly. It's like the Apollo program, we haven't been back to the moon in a while. But the technology they developed for those missions, it's had a huge impact on all sorts of things, from computers to, like, materials science.
But like this quest for warp speed is kind of pushing us to think bigger and bolder, you know?
Yeah. And sometimes those crazy, impossible-sounding dreams lead to unexpected breakthroughs.
It's true. Who knows what we might discover,
Yeah.
just because we're trying to bend space-time.
Exactly.
But let's be real for a sec. Are there any, like, promising areas of research right now that actually hint at warp drive becoming a reality?
Well, there's this really fascinating concept called the Casimir effect. It's where quantum fluctuations in a vacuum can actually create a tiny attractive force between two objects that are really close together. And some physicists believe that if we can manipulate this effect, we might be able to generate that negative energy density that we need for warp drive.
So we're talking about harnessing, like, the weirdness of quantum mechanics to warp space-time. Sounds like something straight out of a sci-fi movie.
I know, right? But it really shows how all these different areas of science are interconnected.
Yeah.
Who would have thought that quantum mechanics could be the key to interstellar travel?
It's pretty mind-blowing. It reminds me of something you said earlier,
Yeah.
that this whole warp speed thing, it's as much a philosophical journey as it is a scientific one.
Absolutely. It makes us ask these huge questions about our place in the universe, the nature of time, and really the limits of what humans can do.
Yeah. It makes you wonder, if warp speed DA become a reality, how would it change us? Like, as a species?
It's a great question. Would we become more unified? Would we venture out into the cosmos as one big team? Or would we just bring all of our old conflicts and divisions with us to the stars?
Right. Would we use this technology responsibly? Or would we repeat the same mistakes we've made throughout history?
It's hard to say for sure, but by talking about these questions now, we can start to think about the ethical side of things and hopefully shape a future where humanity can explore the stars responsibly.
Yeah, those are definitely conversations we need to be having.
Yeah.
And I think that's a great place to wrap up this deep dive.
I agree.
We've covered a lot. From the theory behind warp drive to the mind-blowing implications for, well, pretty much everything.
And for our listener who sent us all this amazing material, I hope this has sparked your curiosity and left you with a sense of wonder about the universe and our place in it.
It's a big, mysterious universe out there.
Yeah.
And who knows, maybe one day we'll be able to explore it all at warp speed. Thanks for joining us on The Deep Dive.